To our first panel titled Breaking Barriers for a Seat at the Table and Overcoming Gender Gaps and Unconscious Bias. In this discussion will explore the distinct challenges women face as they advance their careers in energy and offer leadership strategies that help to break through gender barriers. I would like to invite the moderator and panelists to please join me on stage. To moderate this discussion, we have Dr. Boutheina Tlili, PhD Associate Professor of Electrical Engineering at the Rochester Institute of Technology in Dubai. Joining her are our distinguished panelists, Hind Mutawa, Director at the Ministry of Energy, Tasneem Bakri, Operations Coordinator, Alpin Limited, Carmen Vidal, Chief Procurement Officer at ENGIE Middle East, Meriem Bellizim, Senior Manager, Business Development at ACWA Power. Please give them a warm round of applause and handing over to you.
Thank you very much. So since we are talking about unconscious bias, I have a story to tell, actually. My area of expertise is antenna and microwave, and I usually go to a conference in the US. It's Antenna Propagation Conference, an IEEE conference. It's attended by 1,500 plus, and usually they have a gala dinner. So whenever I go to the gala dinner, I'm well dressed, everything, and the people I'm sitting with on the table, they will tell me, so where is your husband? Who's your husband? I say, well, sorry, I'm here to present my research paper. And he said, oh, okay. So it's very important for me when I wanted to have a conference with women conference. Now we're starting to see a lot of women conference. So in 2011, we had an IEEE GCC conference, and I decided to have one day just women conference. We had more than 150 women in the hall, and I had I invited my male colleagues, and they were telling me, Boutheina, are you sure we can go into the room? It's full of women. I said, so what? We always go to rooms full of men, you know? So I've been the IEEE Women in Engineering Chair for the past 10 years, and we are organizing many conferences and programs basically to empower, encourage, and inspire women to embrace STEM fields, engineering, and stay in the STEM fields. So with that, I would like to start asking questions to our panelists. I would like to start with Carmen. First question, what distinct challenges do you face advancing as a leader?
Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. I think that it's a long career. And as a leader, I'm going to say something that was mentioned before, is that I have seen the same barriers in Europe and in the Middle East. Maybe here, one of the big challenges that I had is to adapt to the working with multicultural. While I was in Europe, yeah, okay, I knew what I had in front of me at, I would say, 95%. Here is one of the things that it's very unique. So trying to incorporate and say, okay, the people, they do have different beliefs, and they work with different sets of rules, different stereotypes. So I think that was the first challenge, is that the way that I had of working in Europe did not work anymore here. Okay, so that was the first one. So the second challenge was breaking that stereotype without losing myself. Because we tend to go, and I was the first manager within ENGIE here in the Middle East. And it was, okay. So Carmen, we want to change that cowboy style that we have. You know, go, 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 go. And it's very easy just to get lost. So I think that was the next challenge. And at some point I had to pedal a little bit back, saying, I'm losing myself. I'm doing too much as they are doing, because they have a different way of doing things. And I would just say that those were the two major around, how do you break this stereotype, the idea that the men would have about having a woman manager sitting at the table. I think that that was the most difficult part.
Okay. Tasneem, so what you're saying is that you have to prove yourself more as a woman, as a leader?
I think that, yes, you have to prove yourself, and what I think is more difficult is to create the trust. And as you know, as part of the success as being a leader, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, is that whether you have the confidence and the trust of your management and your team. So that's something, when you create that point of intimacy, that's difficult. The second thing is that you have to prove yourself, you have to break that stereotype. You have to prove that you're a professional. And you're a professional with competence and being assertive. I think that that's really important. That's a very strong combination.
Thank you, Carmen. Same question to Tasneem.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to just add to that. I think that's very accurate, what you said about being assertive. And that's actually an advice I personally got to actually stop. We usually tend to be people pleasers. We tend to be too nice, and we tend to be perceived like that. So holding people accountable, for example, when you're imposing a deadline or imposing a workflow, I think is very important as a leader, and being assertive is the key to that. And actually also the breaking the stereotypes point that you said, that actually ends up taking a chunk of our time. And when you're focusing on breaking that stereotype, focusing on observing the environment you're in and the challenges you have, I think that reduces your productivity. And I think that's a problem that males do not face, because there's no perceived stereotype about them. And yeah, I think that's another challenge we're facing.
Meriem, so how would you, what challenges do you face as a woman leader? How do you...
Okay, so from my point of view, I have worked in different markets. I worked in North Africa, I worked in Europe, I worked in Latin America, and now in Middle East. And I have to say that it's basically depending on which culture you are working in, which environment, how is the society behaving around you, and also what's the culture of the company. It's very important, because moving from a company to another one with different culture would definitely affect the women in a different way. So from my side, I think when I've been in a culture, as you have pointed out at the beginning, so when I was in a certain culture where everyone is aligned more or less, even if you are not from this culture, you would manage to impose yourself, because you know what to adapt to and how to behave with people. While it's more challenging when you are in a multicultural society, like where we are now here in Dubai, where everyone is coming with a different mindset, with a different way of working, also with a different way of perceiving women, then you need to basically rely on yourself and try to get the best of what you can do, I think.
So, Meriem, what you're saying is that being in a multicultural company is a challenge by itself, not only as a woman. It is not the company,
it's the culture that is surrounding you, because you don't only work with your company, you work with other stakeholders, and you work with people who are coming from everywhere. So if you have different subcontractors, contractors, suppliers also, which are coming basically here in the UAE, they are coming from all over the world without exception, then you need to know with each one how to behave. So if we are talking about a contractor who is from, for example, from the Middle East, you would completely, you would differently be differently behaving with him compared to a Chinese contractor, for instance. So that I think would depend on the person, and it's a self-assessment on how to behave at that time.
All right, thank you. And Hind, so what distinct challenges do you face advancing as a leader, as a woman leader?
So basically, for the challenges that I've been facing through my career, it won't be at this point of my career life, which is I'm considering myself as a middle point of my career life, but probably at the very early entry of my career, because I'm coming from a science and engineering background, which makes me find myself after graduation right in the middle of a gas power plants where. Most probably, or most of the time, I was only the one or two in the board, and probably even the single or the person, one person, technical person in the power plant. There is one in the admin office, but I was there outside with the team. No matter how ready you are, I mean, academically, and you work on yourself, I mean, you're ready to enter this traditionally tagged as male-dominated environment. It's still that you will, I mean, at that point, I was feeling kind of isolated in the beginning because of this shock of, not a culture, but it's just the speciality or the role of the genders. I mean, what I can do versus what is expected from me to do as a female, you know, in that traditionally male-dominated environment. But I'm glad that I've passed that peak, and probably now we are in a better situation because you get used to it, you develop that self-mechanism to deal with it. So,
all right, thank you, Hind. So I go back to Tasneem now. The energy sector is, like you are hearing this today, is mainly male-dominated. So what challenges do you face leading all or mostly male teams, and what strategies do you use to develop effective leadership skills and achieve positive results in your organization?
I think mostly the biggest challenge is being taken seriously and having that assertiveness and that decisiveness valued with male teams. For me, I'm personally lucky to be part of a company, Alpin Limited, that's focused on women empowerment, and we also have an initiative, Alpin Women. So we start to see that women are in a position where they have responsibilities, and they're in a decision-making place already. But mostly when you're faced with that, the best strategy is to focus on not being a people pleaser, not focusing on proving that competence, but rather going about the work. And in the end, it will be proven with your performance, but if we focus and we dwell into our internal misconceptions and what the culture is perceiving about us, I think that will be a hinder to our capabilities. So mostly, I think to focus on what we can change. So for example, our own habits and our own behaviors, how we can become more assertive and more decisive, rather than focusing on the external environment and the culture, because that is what we want to change. So if we focus and dwell on it, I think that would be an obstacle to our performance.
Okay, thank you, Tasneem. Hind? So I repeat the question. So what challenges do you face leading all or mostly male teams? And what strategies do you use to develop effective leadership skills and achieve positive results?
well, yes. In this context, I would say that probably it will be very much relying on myself. I would put this responsibility on myself and how to conquer this situation. And it all comes with confidence, considering that all the policies and the measures are intact in the organizations. But it's all about confidence that you are adding a value to the team. And I'm not a gender balance expert, but what I see is that it's very subjective matter. It's like what I can do versus what are people perceiving me to do. What is I'm expecting, I mean, what is the regimes and figures, I mean, the control measures that are in organization versus the behaviors that are embedded in the organization. So the all subject matter, but again, if I know, I mean, it's all confusing. And as a woman in that tough environment, we need to know where do we stand. And that confidence helps a lot. Like I'm adding a value just like my colleague who happens to be a male most of the time. We are all subjected to the workload, stress, challenges, family and health conditions. So I would choose not to tag myself as a woman that need to fix herself to fill the position. But it's just like we're all on board, we all can be faced with certain aspects that we are a whole human and we are not mechanic, we are not a machine, we're just a whole person. So if once you develop that by being and not by doing, people will feel it and you can articulate this message through your behaviors. And that will demolish or let's say dilute these barriers between you and your team, whether it's male-dominated or non-male-dominated. It's just like the team that works together. And yeah, so that's the...
Do you feel like you have to prove yourself as a female? Like if you compare yourself to your male colleague as he's a leader and you have the same position, do you feel like you have to prove yourself more than him?
No, actually, what I really, I mean, I'm sure most of you have read this, men from Mars and from Venus, but I believe that both of us are from Earth, and we both have the same capabilities and same things. I mean, both of us would really compete and show what they have if we have the confidence, if we stop tagging ourselves that we're different and we are in a weaker position to show. Integrating with men, I'm a person who is made by men and inside. They taught me. I can see my professor here, Dr. Assaf. Oh, that was shocking to see and impressive to see you here today. I mean, all the knowledge that we got, we owe them all what we have. So once we see it in a proactive way, we start integrating with them and we tell them that we are together to a brighter future for both women and men.
Okay. Thank you, Hind.
If I may add, if I may add to her point, I think that it's very important if that person is working for an organization which is empowering women or not. If the organization is empowering women, then it's going to be much more easier for the woman to manage her team, even if her team is a 20, 30, or even more people of male-dominated team. So it's important that companies develop such policies internally and empower women. From the other side, each one of us also need to do her best in order to prove to the company that it's worth it, of course.
Okay. Carmen, you were talking about multicultural, problems, that you have a lot of people from different cultures in your work. So anything else that you would like to add?
I think I'm going to take something that Hind has said and something that Meriem has said. So I think that my team, it's very diverse already, okay, men and women. So the team that works directly for me, I assume I don't have any problem or I don't manage it differently because they're men or women. And the team, I have recruited the team, so I assume that they want to work with me. So I think that's a point. I don't see a different style of leadership because it's a man or a woman. Now, we also have to think that I do have a large team that they don't report to me directly, it's more functionally. And that's a different set of rules because there, yes, you have to prove that you know what you're talking about. But I have to say that, yes, you have to do that initial effort that I would consider that is the same thing if I was working with a man or with a woman. You have to prove, you come new into a group, you have to prove that you know what you're doing. So might take a little bit longer, but I don't see, I have not felt that difference. What I do see a big difference is that in ENGIE, in my company, we do have a very strong culture At the moment, we very hard targets about having 25% of the workforce being women. We do have the only woman in the CAC 40 being our CEO, and I think that that's a very strong message. So I do believe in having policy, but I also do believe in having the right person for the job. So the policies, they're very good. It's how we implement and how we communicate it internally. I wouldn't like them to work against us as a positive bias. And as we could hear in some cases, well, if you are a woman, you are European, you do have already a part of the tick on when you apply for a job. I don't think that's what we want.
Thank you, Carmen. This is for Hind. So what are some of the unique strengths that when identified and developed can enable you to break through gender barrier at senior and executive level?
Yeah, so before we shed light on that, I want to relate to what Alia have mentioned today is, gender balance is a historical issue, and we are still in 2019. We're still discussing the same problems. You do literature review around the world, still the same problem that is common across regions. And the thing is that this makes me very grateful to our motherland, the United Arab Emirates, and to our father of nations, Sheikh Zayed, may his soul lie in peace. The thing is, although UAE is a very, very young country, and from the very beginning there was an insight in seeding this respect that was weaved to the fabric of society and organizations, that there's respect for women, equality. Today we have woman is granted the constitutional rights as men, the equality of wages, access to jobs, access to education. We have the index of gender balance. All of this is not only, yes, I am grateful to it, but if you look at it in an institutional way, no matter how the individuals are ready for this, if the organization are not committed to it, if the policy of the government are not there to set that very conscious and very healthy ecosystem for them to pave the ways, everything else will have a very minimal impact. You can see the surveys from Irina as well. They're very interesting figures here. The policy-driven driving everything is the first, if we're talking about strength, that, breaking the barriers. Now, that's the conscious part. We can always control and measures. But now, if I'm talking about the strength in the medium and the senior level, and I will probably talk about how to unbias the bias, which means that, again, we work in ourselves and confidence that comes from knowledge. And that's what keeps, that can put us in the niche if we are in competition. In a very energy transition period. Power comes from knowledge. Today we are going through energy transition. This one?
Yeah, you're
shall I go closer?
Okay, yeah.
So we are in an era that we see the energy transition is expanding. I mean, we're going to decentralization, decarbonization, digitization, distributed energy. With it grows the demand and the complex challenges of food, energy, and water. And that means, that's too big to be handled by half of the group. We need everybody on board to ride along, women and men. We need to mobilize all the talents that we have. We cannot afford to lose anybody in this, at the entry level and the retention of the qualified people who are on board. So across the value chain. So knowledge brings you, that's lots of opportunity it's a challenge, but again, it's in creating opportunities for us as women to build in our knowledge capabilities, because that means that you're growing in management with the knowledge, and that will put you in the driving seat if this, you can see it with everybody else. And the other point is that confidence also comes with experience. At some points in our career life, especially in the middle, with growing, when we are faced with ample responsibilities, we found ourselves in a position to just shall I take the next task? shall I take the next assignment, or I'll be fearing being, falling into the double bind kind of thing. I'm liked or I'm leading, what's going on? Or like probably some will fear the balance of, falling in the problem of imbalance of family and career. So like where ladies usually feel very guilty if any of this left out. So that will make us think twice before we take the next position. And I think the best way to do it is a bit to stretch our limits, to get out of comfort zone and try to stretch our limits and challenge it. Because every time we go into the new task or new assignment and we succeed, we show ourselves that we really can. There are barriers that we really build it in ourselves that probably is not bad as we think. And the third last point, Dr. Than is looking at her watch. That's the last one.
No, it's okay.
Is that we need to continue being in that, create our cloud of intelligence. Networks like this, they're so vibrant for women and men to network, to know the challenges. You're speaking to the like-minded people to share their challenges. You're not in this alone. That's what we can communicate. And then you keep yourself at the edge of how things are going in your specialty. I always look for an engineer or someone in the energy. I'm talking about energy because it's my field, but it applies to everyone. You need to have that technical information and your skills and communication, and that what also puts you higher confidence to go on. If you're talking about the strength point, how to break the barriers forward.
Thank you, Hind. You elaborate on so many other points as well, so we'll be discussing those in just a second. Meriem, would you like to elaborate a little bit more on breaking?
So on the strength side, I think the first thing is to be strong. Internally, the person has to be quite strong to decide first to study and take a job which is men-dominated job. So before deciding this, the person is already, when deciding this, the person is already strong. In addition to that, I would say that efficiency is very important. So we are equal between men and women. There is no equality in terms of efficiency of performance of the work, because we don't want this idea to carry on of, okay, men are more efficient than women for some reason that we still don't know why. And the third thing is know how to grab every opportunity possible that's passed by, even if sometimes it's a super hard work to say, okay, I'm going for it, but I'm talking about me here, especially that since my first year after graduation till now, I have taken every opportunity, even when it wasn't an opportunity, really, I made of it an opportunity, and it helped me a lot in being where I am now. So there are no barriers, there are no limitations. Just go for whatever you think that it is the right opportunity, take it, and then for sure you will achieve it.
Thank you, Meriem. Actually, I'd like to hear some of your stories. How did you make it here? Maybe Tasneem, I want to talk a little bit about how did you make it to where you are now?
Okay, so for me, personally, I wouldn't say I'm in a leading position, but I am in the beginnings. I'm working as an operations coordinator, so I'm starting to get a feel of the workforce and of the patterns that are that we need to either challenge or embrace. And for me, I believe I just wanted to add to the double bind dilemma that you mentioned, that actually I've read a lot about how men are liked with more success, and it's the opposite for women. So success and likability is positively correlated for men and negatively correlated for women. So when a man is successful, he's perceived as strong, and that is liked by people. Everyone wants to work for that person, but when a woman is strong, they are more often than not seen as too out there or too outspoken, too aggressive, which is again, because of the stereotype we have in our heads that this is the role of women, and this is how they're wired, this is how they're supposed to be. And when we see anything that's not like that, we feel like it's odd. And it's also the same way for men, I believe. That's the double-bind dilemma, and it is actually, I can see that it is evident in success and likability of men and women. Overall, like the strength that we said that we need to enforce, as you said, we need to enforce the strength that we have. We need to reach out for opportunities more because there's also a substantial body of literature that says that men, in the end, they reach out for opportunities more than females. So because of this misconception that we're not going to get it, because of the misconception of this is the culture, so I'd rather fall into my comfort zone and not reach out for that opportunity. I think that's a very important point, what you said, because in the end, we will not be able to see the challenges if we don't reach out for them, if we don't reach out for that opportunity and put ourselves in that position.
Okay. Thank you, Tasneem. What about Carmen? Could you tell us how did you get where you are now?
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's a mix. First of all, you commit and you deliver, and that's part of being efficient. The energy sector is full of engineers, and engineers, they're basically analytical and they like deliverables. So you commit, you take your targets and you deliver. So I started communicating the same way that it was coming. I'm also an engineer, so okay. So sometimes it could be considered as rude, okay? And that's one of the things that I've been saying, Carmen, you need to go a little bit more around and around and around. And ENGIE is a French company. So, but here I work with a bunch of English, so it's bullet points. So you have to adapt the way that you communicate, and not only what you write, but also the information that you give. And for me, that has been a great advantage. So I would just say that that's one. The other thing that I would like to say is that I have become a much more caring person, and caring with a little asterisk is first of all about the engagement of the company, showing that there are certain things that are important to me, and maybe not so, there might be a little bit less analytical, and I'm going to say, okay, sustainability of the supply chain, that's, well, that's important for me. Human rights, caring about the team without being on the paternalistic side, but that works, and I think that's, I am proud of the team and the fact that I know things about the team, and I think that works. So that's part of me, with a little bit of changes to make sure that I know how to communicate and I deliver. And I go to what Meriem says, is that efficiency and delivering is something that we have to show.
All right, thank you. You cannot be what you cannot see, right? So the role of, the significance of a role model, what do you think about this?
I think that the most difficult part is walk the talk. And it's one of the big things that we have now in ENGIE is walk the talk. And I am not perfect. I know that I have people of my team here. But I do believe that if we say we're going to do something, we need to do it. And sometimes it's also something that I have put a lot into reading. When I started working for ENGIE, for me it was the energy, okay, yes, you studied, but it was new. So I spent a lot of time reading, preparing for meetings, asking questions, making sure that if I was going to open my mouth in a meeting, I would know what I was talking about.
So what I'm talking about mostly is like mentoring. Do you have any mentorship program in your organization, or as a woman leader, would you like to have one, or you are implementing one?
Okay, so that's one of the things that in ENGIE we have done a lot of effort. So we do have two different sets of networks. We have women in networking and we have women in leadership. And then we started a mentoring program for women, and actually now is a mentoring program full stop, because it was really successful. So I did have a mentor, it was a man mentor, and now I am mentoring a man. And it's one of the things that it's important. And I think it was mentioned, is how to create the network. Mm-hmm. It does help to create the network. Have a sponsor to guide you, yep. To grab opportunities. That's really important to that. So yes, we do. And I think that is one of the things that being a mentor helps you to grow as a manager and a leader.
Thank you. Meriem, do you have any, you mentioned you have a mentorship program in your organization.
So myself, I was actually, it's been 7 years I am at ACWA Power, and when I reached ACWA Power, when I started, I was the first junior in the team. So there were only directors or VPs at that time in ACWA Power. It was a small company at that time. So when I joined, it was a little bit weird. I mean, everyone was like, okay, there is a junior here. What do we do with her? So it was a bit weird at the beginning, but I'm happy that I landed at that time because I had everyone basically mentoring me. So I was very lucky at that time. So what I started doing after I got hired and I learned my first and second year, the company started hiring other juniors at that time. So I handled all, mentoring at the first days because, not first days, but also first months, because most of the people either didn't have experience at all in developing and managing a power plant, or they had a very short experience, which was maybe completely different than what we do at ACWA Power. So yes, there is a way of helping other, especially when it comes to women. I mean, myself, I try always to push women ahead in order to succeed in their job. Sometimes they face some issues. Like, for instance, just a few weeks ago, I had one person who came to me, just like that, and she told me, you know what, I have some troubles because I cannot really work after 6. So I was like, okay, try to find other solutions in order, instead of coming in the morning at 9, you can start earlier instead of working late at night, because sometimes, of course, we don't do 8 or 9 hours a day. Sometimes you are obliged to do more hours. Yeah. So trying to help each other, I think, is very important also.
Thank you. Tasneem, you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, as at Alpin Limited, we also have a mentorship program, and as you said, it's important that it's mentorship period, not women mentorship, because it's important for everybody. And at Alpin, we have it a little bit more in a more friendly form. It's called the buddy program. So you will have a buddy when you're in entry level, because that's really important. And we also have the Alpin Women initiative, where basically all the women at Alpin became sort of like a fabric to support each other, and it's not just one-on-one mentorship, it's basically a community of women supporting each other. And I think that's really important, and as you said, you cannot be what you cannot see, and shining the spotlight on successful stories of female leaders is very important, and I think we need to start doing that from early on, and outreach programs to high school students maybe, yes. And just showing them that there is a brighter side, there are successful stories, because people sometimes tend to fall back into their comfort zone and actually not apply for universities in certain male-dominant fields or STEM, and so we need to fight that, because there's a lot of competence, there's a lot of potential in females that is sometimes hindered by their misconceptions of what the industry will be. Sometimes they will think it will be very hard, I'd rather just study this or that. And I believe we need to chase that pipeline from the beginning and start attracting females to STEM.
I definitely agree with you. I think we should invite high school girls to initiatives like this to empower them and inspire them. Maybe something to think about for next time. So, Hind, what do you think about mentorship?
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to the stories and I just keep reminiscing because I never been mentored because I learned it the hardest way. It means like I was just like, go to the site and you see, just be with us day to day, see what we do, and then we learn I mean, until I'm an insider, I'm just part of the fabric of the power plant. That was the way. Now, at this point, when I look back, I was like, because I lack that feeling of being a mentee once in my career life. So I feel how important it is to have it. So we don't really probably have a very regular kind of mentor program, but at this point we can choose to be an influencer. At least that's my choice. However, at any opportunity, any point, especially with people who comes as a very early entry, we can answer their questions, and that's a kind of voluntary approach. And probably for the people who are at a bit later stage and the middle or senior, we can discuss and probably, but that's not a mentoring thing. It's what probably would turn into a sponsorship. But let's say to the mentor is going to be more with the people who are coming, networks, any single opportunity that we can answer their queries, clear that ambiguity, uncertainty of the energy field. Which you can find it a lot, and it can be even more than with all respect to what the job fairs do, because we are insider, we have stories from inside the field that we can tell them, and probably that can give them more options and attract them, because that's also an issue in our sector as well, the energy sector. So to answer your questions, no, we don't have programs as far, but probably it's again, it's something that should be pushed with the policies.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking about policy, so...
Yeah, and that mentoring
yes.
as a regular program. We do have trainings. You know, for every new joiner, we train them in different departments. But mentoring is a bit different, because it's a kind of shadowing it.
Exactly.
Till they get all the information.
All right. Okay, thank you. We have also another problem is that, okay, girls go to universities, they have a degree, but we have a leaky pipeline. So anybody wants to talk about what can we do for a leaky pipeline?
Like in my view, again, is just my perception or my observation is that probably we don't really have a very big pipeline for women engineers probably in the energy sector, but if we compare, we have more at the entry level compared to the numbers of, I mean, it starts leaking or the pipes start narrowing whenever you get up the career in the middle. So I think it starts leaking right at that point in the middle career where more assignments are coming in. And that's the points that I've mentioned earlier, you know, that with the commitments and fear of taking the loads, probably that can be one of the problems, and the fear of the perceptions or the bond. That's the two things that I feel can really affect or might make them consider to leave that position.
Basically, there are so many ladies that they have very good degrees and very bright, but they have kids, they stay home, but eventually they want to come back. So do you have any programs in your companies to take these, to train them, to bring them back to the pipeline?
I think, yes, work-life balance is very important, and that is a major leak in the pipeline for women when they have children. They go back after their maternity leave, they start thinking, is my job worth it? Is it worth me leaving my children? And I think that's where the pipeline leaks, and people who don't have the jobs they aspire for don't go back to the field. And I think we can we can fight that by keeping the reach for opportunities, what we were saying about reaching for opportunities, reaching for the positions that would excite you, so that your job in the end is not something boring or tedious or something you're already not very enthusiastic to do, and that way it will be easier for you to come back to. And another thing is that the roles of males and females in households that we basically created. I'm not sure who was the first person who came up with the roles of men and women, and I believe this is a major thing that if we solve this, if we shuffle the roles and responsibilities a little bit, we would have more value put into our careers. And because sometimes even the leaky pipeline comes where women, for example, relocate because their husband's job is perceived more important than theirs. And I've seen that a lot, and I think if we value our careers more, we can stop this leaky pipeline.
All right, thank you. Meriem, how do you think we can encourage women to stay in the career pipeline, not to leave?
Look, it's also a matter of how important is this job to you. Because, I mean, as a human being, if something is not really needed and you are not really passionate about it, you don't go for it, especially if it's hard to get. So if this job is important to that person and important because she is motivated for this job because it's a passion, it's important to be passionate about it, otherwise it's difficult to get it. And if it's needed also, then it would be much easier to go back to work. But in some cases, and I think that, I mean, my interpretation, I'm sorry, I don't know how it is working here, but my interpretation of this is that it's not, this job is not really needed. It was maybe just a personal achievement of studying engineering, getting a degree, because it's good to have it, and it was maybe just, that was the target. But then when you see that it's difficult, and in addition to that, you have to fight, and there are some other barriers, and it's not really needed, I mean, for example, financially, then the person wouldn't go for it. And maybe this is where the leak is coming from.
I think we're running out of time, so just a word of advice before we leave, just like 10 seconds, 15 seconds for everyone.
Okay, I would say we need to start being more careful in terms of how we fight for our rights and how we perceive women empowerment. We don't want to fall into generalizations also about men, and we just need to internalize this revolution. We're basically on a revolution. We need to internalize it, change what we can, change the habits that we can change about ourselves, and also raise awareness about the subject. And I think that's how eventually we will reach the change that we're aspiring for.
Right. Thank you, Tasneem. Meriem?
I totally share your, sorry, the view of Tasneem. And as I said before, I think as an advice, I would ask every girl to take every opportunity possible and not to pretend much attention to whatever is the culture or whatever is the society stereotype or all these limitations. Otherwise, it's hard to start. And once you start it, then you could go for it.
All right. Thank you. Carmen?
Okay, so very quickly, I'm going to go, do not limit yourself. So go for everything and don't create barriers that they are not there. So that's one. And the second thing, I think, is the topic that we have discussed before. Create a solid network of people that you can contact for advice, for mentoring, for discussion, to create those, to search for new opportunities, because they don't need to be here, they can be. So that's something that I would, if I had to start, I would do that again. Create a solid network.
Very good advice, Carmen. Hind?
Yeah, so I would go for, we need to choose how do we respond to barriers, because the barriers are inevitable. They will always be there. The challenges are realistic and they're part of what we do every day. But how do we choose to to face it is what counts and makes things a bit better. Like some of the ladies, I mean, all of us, I mean, whether it's an energy sector or in other sectors, is like either would they, at every barrier, probably she would choose to leave silently, or probably stay, or leave while probably, you know, claiming her discrimination or objection, or she would decide to stay and stay silent, or stay while making a change. And I would vote for the last one, stay and make the change. Because it's what you can stay and you can raise awareness, and probably if you make a change, it's going to be for yourself and people who will follow your footsteps.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. My word of advice is dream big, and everyone can do whatever you want. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you. We take questions now. Yeah, there is a question here. Are we taking questions from here, or I'm not sure?
Good afternoon. I'm from IT department, and I would just like to add a few lines here, as ma'am said. Alibaba is a great example for us. He created 12 million jobs in China, and out of those 12 million jobs, 47% are of ladies who are working in Alibaba. And out of those 47%, 28% are working in higher management level. So once somebody asks Jack Ma, who is founder of Alibaba, who is billionaire at this time, why you have so many ladies who are working in your company? And he said, women, they have sacrificing nature. They care about their team, they care about their company first, before they care about themselves. So that's why I always prefer ladies who are working in big roles, big management companies as well. And that's the main reason as well, the companies who has more ladies power, more women power is more successful than only those men are working in company. Thank you, that's what
Thank you. Any other question?
Hi, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. I'd like to mention that a lot of the time, I work in the recruitment industry, and we specialize actually in the green energy sector and the construction sector. A lot of the time, the barriers are actually within the organization. The fact is, if a woman has a choice between her social life, her personal life, raising a family, and going to work till 6, 7, 8, most of the time, if she already has a family comes first. It is a minority of women who will make that decision, not being wrong or right. So I think a lot of it has to do with the women who are already holding leading positions in these organizations and the organizations who are setting policy to start looking at work-life balance, not just for women, but actually as a progressive way of working nowadays for men and for women to have your own life and not come back from work at 7 and 8 and work on weekends and public holidays. So this is something I think is quite important for people in leadership positions to start really trying to influence hiring managers, policymakers, or stakeholders into going towards.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
I would like to say something because I have two girls, 15 and 17. My husband is a big participant in the success because, yes, I call. I cannot come home for dinner because we have to do, or this weekend I need, or I'm traveling. And I think that that's important. And for a woman, we have talked about the superwoman role. Asking for help is part of managing your career and finding that balance. So I think that we have to, on our personal life, we have to try to stop trying to do everything and being the perfect woman, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, because it does not work. No, you know, one of the plates that we juggle finishes to fall and then break.
My name is Nermin Hamoud. I'm the General Manager for Johnson Controls for GCC region. Thank you very much for this great insight panel. It was really very realistic and great. But my question to you, especially Hind, Tasneem, and Meriem, who are coming from the Middle East culture, and including Dr. Boutheina as well. Have you ever felt that you have like a double personality? You feel that you really act inside the company somehow in a different way than once you just enter into your home or with the family, especially community? Because we are talking about that we are now breaking barriers, and the companies and universities and all the working environments and working authorities or companies have programs to empower women and to help you to convert these barriers into opportunities. But when it comes to the normal people in our society, the taboo is still there and the base is still there. And so how you act on this? Do you really feel that you have double personality?
Shall I?
Sorry for
Yeah,
my
go ahead.
Yeah, it's very interesting question because it's not a double personality. It's probably the double bind that we say. That's what are what we really are, and what are we perceived to or expected to do. But the answer is that again a decision that we make within ourselves to be authentic. It's just to be who we are wherever we go, and get the best out of it. Whenever you keep reminding yourself with this, it helps you along the way, even if you are like, it's not just in a theory, but really, it's not like something easy. You won't find the organization ready to perceive this, but you need to build it. And I think it's, again, I keep going back to the same person, that it's within ourselves. It helps a lot to be authentic and who I am, and I respect that. Also, my colleague, who happens to be a man most of the time, is also himself. So that's my answer for this.
Mine, I don't have double personality. I'm the same, at work. I'm genuine. I don't try. I'm just me. That's how I am. Sometimes I'm not perfect, even at work, but that's how I am. Nobody is perfect. So.
I think when it comes for me, so I worked a lot on site, on project execution, and then I moved to business development. So when I started my career, I didn't know how it worked on site. So I was this nice woman, talking to everyone nicely, expecting that everyone would understand. But I figured out that it didn't work, unfortunately. So I have to admit that my behavior while I was working on site is different than while I am working, for instance, in a meeting with people in an office for business development, for closing a deal. Unfortunately, we have to adapt. This is the way it works. So again, it's a personal choice. It's a personal decision also that in order to reach your objective, again, we are going back to efficiency. The objective is to either close a deal or either reach a conclusion during negotiations. True. Sometimes it happens. I mean, I have to be honest, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you don't deal in the same way with family than with work. Yeah, just because your objectives are completely different. At work, you have your project or you have your task which you are focusing on, and you have your KPIs which are set based on this, while at home you have completely different KPIs. So yeah.
All right, thank you. I think we can take one more question.
Yeah, actually, I am the regional HR manager for tractable engineering. It is part of ENGIE MESCAT. My question actually is how we can attract women to work in such a difficult or tough environment, and how we can retain her as well.
I can answer very quickly here, is to have role models. If you see someone is working in the field, you have a role model, so you want to follow the steps. If you don't see that, you all see it's all men. No woman will try to work in the field or in that area.
I can add one more point.
Yeah.
I think for the entry level, it starts at the universities, at the curriculum, and how the curriculum is shaped. because it's not enough anymore in this in this time of history that we teach or make the students learn only the technical part. They should learn more into innovation and probably the artificial intelligence and everything, even the soft skills that goes with project management that makes a person as a whole very ready to the market. And sometimes the internship that when we send the students out to industry, they don't really reflect everything. So that gap should be closed somehow. Probably that needs another panel to discuss on, but it starts right at the university if we're talking about entry and how to attract them in this versatile energy transition that is, as you know, tractable. It's going. Is not, I mean, we are turning our back on fossil fuels and we're going into green, renewables, and distributed decentralization and so many other things. So do really the newcomers know about this? How much they know about it, how much they grasp about it. They know the mechanics, supply chain, and that's it. So I just want to, if we can one step more and make them very comprehensive, ready as a whole engineer, who's ready to enter the market, there where you can say, yes, you talk to them and they have very confidence in joining the energy sector.
I was going to say the same thing, and it's a very good question whether we should be more active within the technical universities in the region and then try to go and capture talent maybe the last year. And then say, okay, first of all, because you capture the talent. Second, can we give them a role? Can we give them some examples of women who have succeeded in leadership already down the road? And then give them the envy to work. And then say, it's just not a tick. I think that Tasneem or Meriem saying, okay, I am an engineer, goal achieved. There is something behind, and I want to keep having that progress, learning, doing things every day. It's something to consider. And I would just say also that the opportunity to break the stereotypes at that level, where young men and young women, they have a more equal vision of themselves in the role for the future.
Right, thank you very much. I think don't have any more time, so thank you so much.
Thank you all for that fascinating discussion. I think my favorite takeaways were take any opportunities you can get, don't second guess yourself, and don't worry too much about being liked. Thank you once again to our panelists and our moderator.